Welcome back to Midcap Radar. Well, as promised, let's focus on the energy space now. IndiGrid, British International Investment and Norfund have come together to form a $300 million platform known as EnerGrid to develop greenfield transmission as well as battery energy storage projects in India. To discuss more on this development, Harsh Shah, CEO at IndiGrid, and Srini Nagarajan, Managing Director and Head of Asia at BII, join us now. Good afternoon, gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us. Harsh, you're a regular, so let me start with you. The first thing, when we speak about IndiGrid is most of the investors know this particular company as a company that actually onboards mature transmission projects and post which, using the cash flow, get dividend. So why is there a deviation, with this particular platform of getting into a slightly different business compared to the core business? And what is the kind of opportunity you're seeing as far as the battery energy space is concerned?
Thank you, first of all, for having us here today. I think the first thing I would like to clarify is that battery energy storage is not really something new. It is the need of the hour for the Indian transmission system today. Considering the renewable energy expansion that is happening in the country and actually across the world, battery energy storage is a very, very important part of the grid, which plays the role of stabilizing the grid as well as the power requirement. It's new for India. However, it's not new for the rest of the world. And several of our current investors, including GIC and KKR, owns sizable amount of battery capacities across the world in different investments. So while it is first time for IndiGrid in India, but for our shareholders, it has been done several times over at a much bigger scale in the rest of the world. So we derive a lot of comfort on that. Battery energy storage projects are just like transmission, provides a predictable, stable take-or-pay contracts. So it fits right in the alley for us, our business. And therefore, while we have started some of the first two projects to be done on our own, we are partnering with BII and Norfund in EnerGrid to create a bigger pipeline of development assets, which on its own IndiGrid would not be able to do.
Got that. So, just before we go to Srini, one more regulation question we need to ask you is that it's a $300 million, investment between three partners, of which everyone's doing about $100 million each. And by the end of it all, it will be acquired by IndiGrid at a pre-agreed enterprise value. What is this pre-agreed enterprise value, and where are you getting this $100 million at the start to fund this from? And if you could give us this exit route for everyone else, what is this value?
Sure. So first of all, why is IndiGrid doing this? IndiGrid is doing it to have an access to a predictable pipeline of operating assets to grow, right? For being predictable, what IndiGrid is providing to EnerGrid is a confirmed value at which it will acquire different assets, as and when it is bidded out. So there is no fixed number, but the contract will be signed before the bid to ensure that the EnerGrid has a visibility at which IndiGrid will buy, and IndiGrid has a visibility that at which price it will buy from EnerGrid. So it is to create predictability between both platforms. So the price will get decided bid by bid, but it will be agreed upfront between EnerGrid and IndiGrid, along with BII and Norfund. So that's the framework under which we are operating. 100 million, you got to look at it in perspective of scale. IndiGrid's AUM today is $3.5 billion. So this is just about, give or take, 3 to 3.5% of its AUM. So it's not a significant size in terms of capital commitment, especially when this commitment will be made over the next couple of years as we win projects. Again, where it will come from, IndiGrid itself right now has more cash balance or substantially more cash balance than 100 million. So it's not that we need to do anything creative to get this. This capital is already available with IndiGrid based on all the cash accruals and capital raises that has been done till now.
Okay, got that. Mr. Ragarajan, good afternoon and thank you so much for joining us. First up, BII, even in its earlier avatar, has actually been ahead of the curve in identifying opportunities across Indian markets and Indian equity markets, as well as, some of the unlisted players where you have investments. What made you choose, the battery energy storage solutions as an investment option? And number one, what is the kind of opportunity that you see? We understand that, you've already tied up the exit, given the fact that IndiGrid will be buying it. And secondly, why chose IndiGrid for this particular, foray?
Thank you. I think, first of all, I must say that we are extraordinarily delighted to be a part of IndiGrid and to create this platform, which was announced back in COP29. Just as a background, we are a UK government-owned DFI, and we want to deliver the climate finance particularly in the regions where our capital is much more required and in areas where the commercial capital is slightly nervous of coming. India is a very important market for us. We have investments in excess of $2.4 billion, and we've been around for the last 35 years. The other objective is to make sure that we don't crowd out mainstream investors so that we are being additional in every investment we make. I'm giving you this genesis because this is very important as a background to why we invested here. As you know, the lack of transmission infrastructure in India is actually a critical bottleneck for achieving India's whole target of 500 gigawatts by 2030. So what we have done in IndiGrid is to take the early stage development risk, which might be too high for the commercial investors. And this partnership will develop this critical infrastructure, thereby improving the grid efficiency and the whole renewable energy integration, really. And the structure will also help mobilize other commercial investors into this particular platform. So I just have to say that why did we do this? IndiGrid is an extraordinary company. First of all, I must say that look, it's been created by great partners who are already ahead in this whole transaction. And I think the more important thing for us is to fundamentally ensure that the launch of this whole platform definitely demonstrates how BII is trying to pioneer its investment in the area of climate finance.
Mr. Nagarajan, one question. We understand that in this particular investment that you're making, you will get an exit because IndiGrid will be buying this. Now, typically, what is the hurdle rate of return for you when you invest in such projects? So what is it that you're looking at? You don't need to give an exact number, at least the internal hurdle rate that you'll work with.
See, fundamentally, there are multiple routes for exiting from, as far as BII is concerned. As you know, returns in infrastructure are not going to be particularly the same as what private equity style investment, in the overall investments will make. Considering that BII will be investing at this high-risk phase of the project during the whole development and the overall, the project itself, the risk-adjusted return in our investment will have to be commensurate to that. Our target return will be based on multiple factors, including the complexity of the project, the competitive dynamics in the bids, etc. So we anticipate that the overall portfolio returns will be somewhere around mid to high teens.
Okay, mid to high teens.
Harsh, one more question from our end. Given the fact that, like Sir just mentioned, that, initially these are very risky infra assets, would you be a little worried about, actually getting all of the required approvals, both internally as well as, from shareholders, while you're going ahead and acquiring these assets back, once they reach a slightly more mature stage? And number two, what is it that you're doing in order to go ahead and increase the AUM?
Sure, certainly. So I think to answer your first question, that's why we are forming EnerGrid in partnership with BII and Norfund. On its own, IndiGrid would not be contributing $300 million size of capital to develop these kind of projects. So we are partnering to have a multiplier impact. With the capital that we are putting in, about 100 million, and with BII and Norfund another 200, put together we'll be able to do around $1.2 billion of projects, which IndiGrid would not have done it on its own standalone. So that has a multiplier impact. While transmission remains a difficult sector to be in at a development stage, it's evolved substantially over the last 10 years. And we think that with land compensation going up, landowners are getting fair compensation at the link to market value of the land, which has been always the big trigger, and which makes it relatively easier in terms of execution, or rather, I would say fair in terms of execution of projects. Approval processes in general has improved substantially over the last 10 years, whether it's forest clearance or other clearance that's taken. High amount of transparency has come into place. Having said so, we still not would have done $1.2 billion on our own. Partnering with EnerGrid in this regard with BII and Norfund allows us to do a multiplier of much larger assets. To your second question, this is exactly, we are adding $1.2 billion of assets, which is give or take, I would say 10,000 crores in the coming 2 to 3 years in our balance sheet. So this will be a significant part of our pipeline at IndiGrid that we'll look to grow with. We'll continue to do M&A in renewable space and transmission space, but this will be an additional, more predictable line of business for us to grow our portfolio in the coming years.
Got that, Harsh, and thank you so much, Mr. Nagarajan, as well joining. We'll have a much longer conversation with you next time around. But moving on, let's slip into a short break. We'll get you more on the markets and stock specific action on the other side. Stay tuned.